David, what is Genjo Koan for you?
Genjo Koan. Genjo means like sudden wonderful appearance.
Okay.
Koan, well, we're probably all familiar with the term koan, meaning like a spiritual problem or a spiritual question.
Yes.
So in one sense, you can say the sudden wonderful appearance of the big question of your life. But when Dogen, the author of this text, writes koan in Genjo Koan, he doesn't use the characters that we read as meaning spiritual problem. He writes slightly different characters,
Okay.
which mean literally the reality of your life.
Okay.
So Genjo Koan is the sudden wonderful appearance of the reality of your life. So Buddhism is about the fact that we don't see the reality of our life clearly. But it may suddenly dawn upon us, you see.
As by surprise.
And it comes as a surprise. Yes, it comes suddenly.
Yep.
So Genjo Koan is a text by 13th century Zen master Dogen about satori, about spiritual awakening.
Yep.
And it asserts that spiritual awakening occurs suddenly, that it's an irreversible change, and profound.
Wow.
And the nature of it is, from a subjective point of view, you might say from the inside, sudden wonderful appearance of the reality.
As it is.
Reality as it is. That's right. And in a way in the book he's saying it isn't what you think it is, and it isn't going to be what you expect it to be.
Okay.
Like that, you see.
Yeah.
But he makes a big point of the difference between the state of satori and the state of non-satori.
Okay.
That there's a rupture, if you like, at this point, a change. It's about change. It's about change.
Yeah. Yeah. And does he see it as a sudden change then in your?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
Sudden change. And he uses in the text, he uses this notion of how if you look into a sheet of water, you may be able to look deeply into the water. You can see the fish, the rocks, the da-da-da-da.
Yep.
And then the light changes.
Yeah.
And suddenly, when a certain tipping point is crossed, you no longer see into the water. You see the reflection, classically in Japanese, Chinese literature, the reflection of the moon. But you see a reflection in the water, you see. So the water has changed from being transparent and full of whatever it's full of, into being a mirror. And he uses this to illustrate how a sudden change can occur without the water actually having changed. The fish are the same, the rocks are the same, the pondweed is the same, but the effect has radically changed.
Correct.
Just like that.
Yeah.
You see. And he uses this to illustrate the idea that satori can happen to anybody. It doesn't matter what fish you've got swimming around inside you.
Yeah.
You see? It's not a matter of killing all the fish.
Not needed, no.
You might take the fish to represent, your neuroses or whatever. It's not a matter of changing what's inside. It's a change in the way you approach life, which means that you are then perceived in a different way. Just as the water is perceived in a different way when the light changes.
Yeah.
And the big outside light that makes the water suddenly change, makes the inside of the water dark and the outside bright, the moon represents the Dharma.
Okay.
You see, the moon represents the spiritual truth.
Okay.
Like that.
And that's then reflected in the water.
Yeah. So there's this notion that the spiritual truth, the Dharma, can reflect in any water. And Dogen then goes on to build this by saying again using a well-known Buddhist image, in even a dewdrop. You see, tiniest dewdrop can reflect the whole moon.
Yep.
So be you ever so small, be you ever so humble, be you ever so ordinary, you can reflect the whole Dharma.
That's good news.
So yes, it's really good news. You know, it is a kind of gospel in that sense. It's a good news.
Yeah. And it's not diluted. I mean, it's not every dewdrop gets one.
They get
billions.
a perfect moon.
Exactly.
Every single dewdrop gets a perfect moon. And it doesn't matter how many dewdrops are reflecting the moon, each one gets the whole moon.
Wow. Yep.
They don't just get their share,
No.
they get the whole moon.
Yeah, amazing.
Like that. Yeah. So this is Genjo Koan. Is this?
And you're saying it happens spontaneously, but on the other hand, do we need some training for this?
Well, this of course is the big issue.
Yeah. Please tell us.
Because in one sense, Dogen is saying there is no method. There's no guaranteed, if I do X hours of this or umpteen million recitations of that, or nothing has a guaranteed result. You will get your satori attached to it. But he does say, he gives some hints, as it were. So, like at one point he says that, he points out that the reflection of the moon in the dewdrop, be the dewdrop ever so small, the reflection will be as deep as the moon is high. So the distance between the moon and the dewdrop, significant. So what he's saying here essentially is that the more humble you are, the bigger the spiritual
awakening
effect will be. You say.
Yeah.
So the person who comes into the Dhamma with a very humble, self-effacing, modest attitude, more likely to have this kind of satori realization than the person who comes in full of ambition to achieve satori and proud of their ability and so on. That person's going to have much more difficulty.
Yeah. And Dogen was a fan of Zazen, was he not? Or
yes.
Yeah.
Yes. He uses the term Zazen both in the literal sense of sitting cross-legged with a specific posture, breathing, and so on. He also uses it very generally in what we might call a metaphorical sense, that the spirit of Zazen in everything you do.
In daily working life.
Daily life, that's right. Washing up, cleaning the floor, and so on.
Instructions for the cook as one
Instructions
of those
for the cook,
examples.
exactly, yes. Instructions for the cook, very important, powerful text. And the cook might never get to the meditation hall, but he serves the community with love and compassion and concern, and he takes seriously the responsibility for the welfare of those who do go to the meditation hall.
Yeah.
And so he is still practicing Zazen, even though he never gets to sit on the zephyr. Like that.
Yeah.